So for week two, we're going to go over project management and forecasting, which is chapters three and four respectively. We'll be, like I said, we'll be talking about chapter three, project management first, and I'm really excited about this week because the last 5 years of my career was spent exclusively in projects. I executed construction and commissioning projects, IT network and software implementation projects, and full life cycle of very mission critical projects for the U.S. military. A little bit more about me. I'm a certified project management professional. Spent 20 years in project and operations management. I have a Master of Engineering from University of Alabama at Birmingham with a concentration in construction engineering management. I'm also a licensed stationary engineer with the limited license in Los Angeles, California, and I'm certified in construction quality management for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and NAVFAC for their contractors construction quality program. Some notable projects that I've done: regional base operations services contract for the U.S. Navy, a high altitude electromagnetic pulse for the U.S. Navy, a data center in Salt Lake City, Utah, for a federal agency. You guys can look it up. I can't really divulge who this was for, but you can look this up and find this out pretty readily. And currently for the Centinela Solar Energy Project for Ellis Power Development. Now, this project that I am on with Centinela Solar Energy, I came on at the last part of construction and went into the commissioning part. And then now, since we got awarded the operation and maintenance contract for that project for the next 5 years, I'm the plant manager there. So, the material that comes from the publisher immediately has a global company profile of Bechtel. Now, we're going to go over that, but I want you guys to know first what project management is. So, let's see here. Let me pull up the pinball. Let me just slide that over here for y'all. Okay, so the question is, before we even go over Bechtel, I want you guys to know first what is a project. A project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. And this is coming from the project management body of knowledge from the Project Management Institute 5th edition. The temporary nature of projects indicates that a project has a definite beginning and an end. And this is the same for any project. There's always a beginning and an end. You start with your championing of the project until you do close out. So the end is reached when the project's objectives have been achieved, or when the project is terminated because its objectives will not or cannot be met, or when the need for the project no longer exists. So that means when you've already done the project, you've already completed the project, you've already built the building, you've already implemented the software, and there's no other punch list items that are left. Now, a punch list is at the end of the project, and the owner or the champion for the project sees that there are still some leftover things that need to be addressed before you can really close out the project. That's a punch list. That's a list of items that constitute what is left to do. So, temporary does not necessarily mean the duration of the project. In short, it refers to the project's engagement and its longevity. Temporary does not typically apply to the product, service, or result created by the project, and most projects are undertaken to create a lasting outcome. For example, a project to build a national monument will create a result expected to last for centuries. And the project can also have social, economic, and environmental impacts that far outlive the projects themselves. And we can see this in just for example, for a bad social and environmental impact would be the the issues with asbestos. You know, it used to be where asbestos was the best thing since sliced bread for insulation, and then later on we found out that it was really bad for people. Okay, it it caused mesothelioma in people who got in contact with asbestos. So let's go back to Bechtel now. For for Bechtel, I found a video here uh, that would be great for y'all to see, and this is on YouTube, and I'll play it for y'all here. Put it in HD. Just hit play. Doesn't want to play. Let's see what it does.
Right now, somewhere in the world, Bechtel people are hard at work. For our customers, for our communities. Doing our job means doing the right thing, and doing it well, no matter what. Our colleagues embody the commitment, discipline, and leadership it takes to achieve extraordinary results. Project by project, from conception to completion. That means setting the highest standards and sticking to them year after year, decade after decade, generation after generation. That's the Bechtel difference.
So now we saw the video from Bechtel. Okay. So now I'm gonna talk about the rest of the slides here. So the company profile is for Bechtel Group, and Bechtel is a engineering, procurement, and construction company that, and that means engineering, procurement, and construction. You design, build. You design infrastructure, chemical plants, buildings, bridges, things of that nature. Procurement, because when you build when you build a project, basically you do have a supply chain, and then a lot of that comes procurement. And you're saying that you're gonna do all of your own procurement. And construction, of course, that's self-explanatory because you build it. Now, you can just imagine that a lot building things of that nature, mega projects that big. It, project management is important with that. So you plan it, you schedule it, you control it, you know. And with the scheduling and the controlling, you'll see what's coming up here in the next slide, which is project management techniques, PERT and CPM. Now, I've in the next slide, I have examples of CPM and then PERT. Now, PERT is program or project evaluation review techniques, and this was thought of and put together by the U.S. Navy while it was developing the Polaris submarine missile program. Um, Now, CPM, which is critical path method, was also being developed at the same time, but um, for a civilian type application. But now both are being applied to both military and civilian applications because project management is project management, and schedules are schedules, and controlling is controlling. So for critical path method here, it's the longest duration possible for a project, and that's the critical path. So let's look at the critical path here. So you have you start with A, okay, and you have different paths around this project, designated by the arrows. So if you see here, they've identified the critical path as the red arrow. So A to B to C to D to E, which is it takes a duration of 10 for A, duration of 20 for B, duration of 5 for C, duration of 10 for D, and duration of 20 for E. Now, that means if you add them all together, the total duration of A, B, C, D, and E is greater than any other combination in this critical path diagram. So, A, B, C, D, and E tasks or milestones are what is identified as the critical path. Now, next up here, we have a sample PERT chart. PERT, it's almost like a critical path, and you can display a PERT chart in different manners. Actually, you can display PERT just like a CPM chart, but you'll see that the way it's being portrayed out here is a little bit different than uh, what the CPM chart or diagram would be. Okay, now moving on. This is just an outline for what we're gonna go over. So we're gonna critique PERT and CPM and using Microsoft Project to manage projects, and I added that the icon over there. And next up here, we'll see an example of a Microsoft Project Gantt chart for your scheduling. As you'll see here, you'll see for each major milestone, you have a scope here of tasks. You know, so, and each of those tasks is related to an amount of time or a duration. The top here is the total duration for software development, and you got your little sub milestones here for analysis of software requirements. It takes 33 days, if I can read that correctly. And that encompasses the whole thing. And this bar here, this black bar, what designates this whole, all of these steps that go underneath analysis of software requirements. Okay. And next up, you can also do a Gantt, a project Gantt chart using Microsoft Excel. And this is an example of that. Like I said, you have your tasks over here, when it would start, when it's due, percent completion while you're doing this, and you can program Excel to do this, whether it's a conditional format or you're gonna do this with VBA. So, like I said, you got your tasks here: start of work, due dates, percent complete, work done, and remaining. So, in this chapter 3, project management, your learning objectives are: you should be able to use a Gantt chart for scheduling. You should be able to draw a AOA and AON networks. And you'll see what those mean while you read the book. I don't want to give it away. You should be able to complete forward and backward passes for a project, and that's you go forward, then you go back. You're looking at the paths around the project and trying to see the most um, the fastest way where you can finish their project, and you'll also talk about crashing and all that stuff. Now you're going to determine a critical path for that network, and you should be able to calculate the variance of activity times. Okay, because it could either be plus or minus X number of days or hours or weeks, depending on what you're doing. And crashing a project. Crashing normally means you're gonna try to find activities in your schedule that you can actually do at the same time or close to the same time, as long as one or two um, uh, things are one or two aspects of that step has been satisfied in order to be able to do the next step or do the step at the same time. So more about Bechtel. What they've done, they've constructed a 30 high security. They constructed 30 high security data centers worldwide for Equinix Incorporated, valued at $1.2 billion. They, they're built and run a rail line between London and the Channel Tunnel, which is $4.6 billion. Developed an oil pipeline from the Caspian Sea region to Russia for $850 million, and expanded the Dubai airport in the United Arab Emirates, and that's $600 million, in Miami Airport in Florida. As you can see, it's not just going to encompass one type of project. There's going to be different types of project for different types of industries, as long as it's some kind of infrastructure. And again, more of their projects here: building liquid gas, natural gas plants in Yemen for $2 billion, and Trinidad, West Indies for $1 billion. Building a new subway for Athens, Greece for $2.6 billion. Constructed a natural gas pipeline in Thailand for $700 million. Built 30 plants for iMotor.com, a company that sells refurbished autos online, for $300 million. I've never heard of them, but I guess they've done this. Building a highway to link the north and south of Croatia for $303 million. So, like I said, Bechtel is an EPC company, engineering, procurement, and construction, and this is what EPC companies do. I work for another EPC company, which is in direct competition with Bechtel. I work for Fluor Corporation, and we do just about the same things. I think we do more operation and maintenance than Bechtel does, but we do about equal amount of EPC worldwide as Bechtel. So, moving on to forecasting, chapter 4. And don't mind where it says Principles of Operations Management, ninth edition. This is just all of this still applies. It was provided by the publisher. So if there are any issues with the content in this, be sure to bring it up to me, and I'll make changes to the slides and send it all to you. So for forecasting, the global company profiles for Walt Disney Parks and Resorts. And what is forecasting? And we're going to talk about that in there, and the strategic importance of forecasting, the 7 steps in the forecasting system, and forecasting approaches. Now, you could imagine, for a company like Walt Disney Parks and Resorts, forecasting is a very, very important part of their business. And the reason for that is they need to be able to know what are the peaks and valleys of their revenue, when they should be staffing for more, getting more temporary employees to staff up for the busy periods. They look at when people take vacations, and now data is important to for this. When you do forecasting, data is the most important part. So you're gonna learn about these forecasting approaches. Um, there's a time series type of forecasting, associative forecasting methods, monitoring and controlling forecast, and forecasting in the service sector. Now, service sector, um, that's just about the same thing. And Walt Disney's a big service company. They provide entertainment basically. Although a lot of their business is centered on um, providing a venue. The service itself is what sells Walt Disney, and that service is associated with a an image of what Walt Disney is. So it's all put together where it's all the image and the forecast and that all plays into how Walt Disney operates. Now, for your learning objectives, you should be able to understand the three time horizons and which models apply for each use. And this might be confusing right now, but just take your time reading the book. This chapter will kind of break it down for you. Explain when to use each of the four qualitative models. Apply the naive, moving average, exponential smoothing, and trend methods. And these are the methods you're going to use as part of your forecasting. And you'll be computing the three measures of forecast accuracy. Develop seasonal indices. Uh, so, and that's what I was talking about when you're forecasting and you're trying to see what seasons people actually take vacations and what seasons the locals actually go to Walt Disney or all of their resorts to partake in the happiest place on earth. So they will conduct a regression and correlation analysis. Okay, when there's a rise in travel, for example, 3 day weekends, 4 day weekends, when there is a recession, how does that affect their revenue? Um, and using a tracking signal, basically, this is what your trigger is to say, okay, yeah, we're gonna not make the forecast because of this tracking signal that we're looking at. So, you'll read all about that in the chapter. So it provides a competitive advantage for Disney. Now, I'm sure that, you know Walt Disney's has a room full of statisticians that all they do is crunch numbers to find out, you know, when, where, and what. So because they have a global portfolio. So now they have resorts in Hong Kong, they have resorts in Paris, Tokyo, Orlando, and Anaheim. Now, I've been to the one in Hong Kong, the one in Paris, the one in Tokyo, and the one in Anaheim. Although I've been in Orlando, I did not go to uh, the Disney Resort in Orlando. And maybe next time when I'm in the area, I will. Revenues are derived from people. Like I said, they provide a venue that has an image of the service that Walt Disney provides, and the images and the rides and the experience. It's the whole experience. They're selling the experience. So that's why the revenues are derived from people and how many visitors and how they spend their money. If at this season they sell more hot dogs, they will stock up with more hot dogs and advertise for hot dogs. Daily management report contains only the forecast and actual attendance at each part. So you'll get a report all from all over the world. They'll see, okay, the Disney Resort in Hong Kong in the summertime. They What they saw last year was an increase of 10% in attendance, and then this year, because there's a global recession, there is a 15% decrease in attendance. So, Disney generates daily, weekly, monthly, annual, and 5 year forecasts. And each forecast is used by labor management, maintenance, operations, finance, and park scheduling, which is, it all plays into each other. Labor management, like I said, if they need more personnel because of a ballooning effect of people attending or going to their resorts. And because of that, there'll be more, the frequency of rides will increase. And with the increase of that, there'll be an increase in maintenance, and there'll be an increase in operations, finance, and park scheduling. So instead of limiting the schedules for the parks, they will expand their schedules based on the forecast of people's attendance. So, like I said, forecasts used to adjust opening times, rise show staffing levels, and guests admitted. So, 20% of customers come from outside the United States. Yes, because this is the original one in Anaheim, and there's also the Disney World Resort in Orlando. Um, People from all over the world come to see the happiest place on earth. So their economic model includes gross domestic product across exchange rates and arrivals into the United States. So like I said, they already have this model to where X amount of in X amount of flights that come into the U.S. or X amount of boats that come into the U.S. or X amount of ground travel that comes into the U.S. A percentage of that will go and see Disneyland or Disney World. Okay. So there's a staff of 35 analysts and 70 field people surveying 1 million park guests, employees, and travel professionals each year. Just like I said, there's a room full of statisticians, and all they're doing is analyzing data. So, inputs to the forecasting model include airline specials, Federal Reserve policies, Wall Street trends, vacation holiday schedules for 3,000 school districts around the world. And which is true because when families come to Disneyland or Disney World, it's during the kids' vacation or any kind of 4-day weekend or 3-day weekend that they can actually get away and go to Disneyland. You know, the products that they put out in the media directly support their park operations, and that's basically a an advertising for them. So, an average forecast error for the 5-year forecast is 5%, and that's very close. Um, they probably have a very robust model that adjusts to the most minute, you know, signal or element that they see, and they probably continuously adjust the forecast as days go by. So the average forecast error for annual forecast is between 0 and 3%, and that is astounding. My forecast, for example, for the plant, and I've done a 5-year forecast for expenditures and 1 or 2 years, 3-year forecast for expenditures, and my error rate would be around 15 to 20% for a budget. Okay. Um, the problem is with my plant is we're relying on the sun for production, and weather doesn't always play nice. So now, so that's it for the for week 2, module 2. Um, and I expect you guys to read up on those 2 chapters, and I'll see you guys in the discussion forums. Thank you very much.